Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nessie's Dead. As always, we are your hosts, Spencer and Helen.
Hello.
Hello. I'm excited because you said that what you have to give me tonight is something I'm going to be very interested in.
I do. So this is definitely something that I have not covered before. So this is new ground for me. It's not going to be true crime.
Is it like my wheelhouse kind of content? Oh, okay.
100%.
Okay, cool.
So I'm thinking you're going to know this.
Okay.
So this case or encounter is actually known to be either one of the best cases of alien contact or one of the most ridiculous cases of contact.
Can I guess it?
You can guess.
Is it Barney the alien?
Let me give you some hints. This cave served as an inspiration for stories about little green men. Even though this term does go back hundreds of years, this case is very famous and has inspired many fictional stories, including Steven Spielberg, who used this to base the science fiction horror film Night Skies in the late 70s. And in 1986, the film Critters was loosely based on the events of this encounter.
Oh, I know it. I don't know what the term is, like what it's called. Is it set on like a farm?
Yeah.
And a bunch of these, I think I know it.
The Kelly Hopkinsville incident.
Yes, I think I know exactly. I'm pretty sure I know it.
Okay, so you think you know the Kelly Hopkinsville incident. So we'll see. Let's get started. So this took place in Kentucky, about 7 miles from Hopkinsville, in a small town with a population of less than 200 people in Kelly, Kentucky. It was 1955 on the night of August 21st until the morning of August 22nd when this incident took place. That evening, Billy Ray Taylor, who was a carnival worker, went out to the well to draw some water with a pail. He reportedly saw a silver flying saucer in the sky coming from the south and landing north of the house that was trailing fire behind it. And he reported the fire as being able to see all colors of the rainbow and that it stopped. And
the craft was shooting fire?
Uh-huh.
Like, okay.
Yes.
I'm wondering if it was actually like a stream of flames or kind of like when you see a meteor or like a comet, it has that like tail. I wonder if that's kind of what he was seeing?
Yes. So the way he described it as it had fire trailing behind it that was all colors of the rainbow, but that it did stop and hover for a moment over his house before it seemed to land or crash north of the home. Now, after seeing this, he ran back into the one-story house that the Sutton family owned. This was a 3-room house, and it was surrounded by maple trees and tobacco fields. At the time, the home did have electricity, but it did not have running water, telephone, television, or even a radio. Now, for 1955. So during this time, this wasn't unheard of for where they were located. The house was occupied by 50-year-old widow Glennie Lankford, her children Glennie. Her children Lonnie, who was 12, Charlton, who was 10, and Mary, who was 7.
Poor Mary got the most simple name.
I know.
Well, no offense to any Mary out there, but we got Glennie and Lonnie.
And Charlton and Mary. There were also 2 sons from a previous marriage, 25-year-old Elmer Lucky Sutton, 21-year-old Charlie J.C. Sutton, and their wives, 29-year-old Vera Sutton, 27-year-old Alina Sutton, and Alina's 30-year-old brother, O.P. Baker, 21-year-old Billy Ray Taylor, and his 18-year-old wife, June. Now, Taylor had worked with Lucky at the carnival at a previous job, so him and his wife were visiting in from Pennsylvania at the time. So this would make a total of 11 people that were staying in this home that evening.
How many rooms again?
3.
Okay.
It was a 3-room house. So after Billy had seen this outside, of course, he burst into the home and told everyone about the burning flying saucer that had just flown over the house and landed. And he had believed that it did land at the end of the property. Unfortunately, No one believed him in the house, not even his wife. He decided not to go and investigate the landing, stating that he didn't want to get involved or get in the way to whatever had just landed. And at the time, he started to convince himself to believe that what he saw could have been something that came from the nearby Air Force Base, which was only 40 miles south of the
Oh,
house at Fort Campbell. He sits out on the
okay.
front porch that evening and he's expecting to see helicopters or military vehicles that would be heading to the location of what he was assuming this time was an aircraft landing. About an hour passed of him sitting out on the porch waiting to see this circus of military vehicles go by, and then he realized there was no activity as he had expected. His friend Lucky joins him and they begin wondering that maybe they didn't know about the crash or they didn't know that this had even occurred, but because they had no phone, really wasn't much that they could do about what they had seen taking place over the house. However, wouldn't have much time to think about this, as suddenly the dogs began to go wild on the porch, barking and growling and behaving viciously at something in the dark of the night. The dogs, though, seemed too frightened to leave the porch and run off to investigate or even attack what was making them go so wild, which was odd behavior for these dogs. They are farm dogs and they're pretty accustomed to patrolling and protecting the house and going all about this 25 acres of land on
Mm-hmm.
this farm around them. But then Lucky and Billy Ray spotted what the dogs were seeing in the dark of the night. Coming out of a nearby canal towards the north of the property, they saw a faint silver glowing light. This glowing
A
light
silver light?
Mm-hmm. This glowing light was floating back and forth from the ground to about 5 feet in the air. The men claimed it was not glowing like a flashlight and seemed to be almost trying to hide between the trees and bushes. A few minutes more.
So when I did Sam the Sandown Clown and Mr. Y talked about watching the UFO go back and forth, that kind of reminds me of this.
No, this is going to be different.
Or this reminds me of that when with the UFO bouncing back and forth, except that one wasn't hiding.
Oh, this is not a UFO.
Oh.
Mm-mm. A few more minutes later, they were able to see that the glowing light was in fact an humanoid creature that
Oh.
stood between 4 to 5 feet tall. The creature was described as having a big head with large protruding bat-like ears, large round eyes that glowed even brighter than the light around it, and very thin legs.
It sounds like Baby Yoda.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? The pictures of it kind of look very bat-like. Like imagine like a big bat with the eyes way on
But
the
no
side
wings.
of the head. Like
Oh.
very like on the very sides of the head almost. It was really weird.
Okay.
So
Fashion.
fashion. So at this time, Lucky and Billy Ray, of course, they run into the house and they're cussing, grabbing weapons. They're just in a fury. The rest of the family was a bit shocked by this behavior, especially since they were telling them what they had just seen outside. And at first, Lucky's mom thought that they were perhaps playing a joke or a prank on them and told them that taking the guns was way too far for this prank. And she attempted to go outside and see for herself what this commotion was all about. But the two men, of course, wouldn't allow her. Even though at this point she did think it was a prank, she told the other children to go and get to the back of the house.
So she probably felt something was off.
Yeah, I would
Even though
think
she's
so.
like, I think it's a prank, but she probably knew deep down it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. At this point, Lucky took the .22 pistol to the front porch, and Billy Ray went out to the back with a 12 gauge. When all of a sudden they could hear Lucky's mother screaming from inside the house, as she was now seeing a face peering into the window
Mm.
back at her.
And
Later,
it's one of these creatures.
yes,
I can't help but find that sort of like humorous.
it's just staring at her through the
Yeah.
window.
I'm sure in the moment it's very creepy,
Oh, yeah,
especially because you don't know what it is.
exactly.
And I'm sure they look scarier in real life. And I'm sure there's kind of that uncanny valley element to it because it has a sort of like it's kind of, oh, looks like an animal. Oh, kind of humanoid, but it's neither.
Mm-hmm. And it's floating.
Oh, they don't walk?
No, they don't walk. Later, she would describe this face to the police as being, quote, merciless.
Oh,
So,
so it wanted to get her.
yeah, it looked very scary. Lucky heard the screaming, of course. He rushes back into the house and saw the figure staring in through the window as well. And he didn't hesitate in shooting. So this is the first shot at the creature, which was around 9 p.m. Now, he shot the figure, and when he did so, he described the bullet hitting the creature as then the sound it would have been made if you're hitting a metal pill, like if you were shooting at a metal pill. He said that the creature flew backwards into a somersault, and he watched
What?
it. Yeah.
It's a gymnast now?
And yeah. Well, I think like if the gun hit it, it kind of probably knocked it back, especially if it's floating.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And he watched
the idea of it somersaulting to me, it's like Gymboree.
Gymboree. It was like ploo, ploo, ploo. And
he gets back up. He's wearing a blue leotard.
he's got a wand. Like the frogmen.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, he watched it go back to the tree line, but it didn't crawl like normal. He said that it looked as though it was hovering over the ground. And while it was doing so, it was making a rattling noise, which he said, quote, sounded like a bag full of pennies.
Are they robots, maybe?
Oh. Alien robots?
Yeah. What? I mean, I feel like aliens kind of get tossed into like robot ideas a lot, and that people think that aliens are robots from the future, but then I'm like, what? Like, I don't know. I don't buy that. But it is kind of weird how the bullet like clinks off of it, and then as it moves, it
sounds like
rattles.
pennies. Yeah. Like it's been shook up inside.
Yeah.
Now, once Billy Ray heard the gunshot go off, he ran back into the living room. Lucky filled him in on what had just occurred, and both men then decided to go back out onto the front porch. After describing what had happened, they had a hunch that the bullets would not protect them against whatever they had just seen through the kitchen window. So back on the porch, Billy Ray and Lucky, however, still waited for about an hour and a half to try and shoot whatever it was again. Then, without warning, a long, thin arm with claw-like hands grabbed at Lucky's head from the roof of the house.
Oh?
Yeah. Now, his mom tried to pull him back inside, but he pushed his mom back inside the house and made his way to the front yard, where he carefully aimed towards the house and shot at the humanoid again. It fell down, and it made its way back into the tree line, the same way that it had before, with this metallic sound and that clinking noise like the coins. And it lowered itself down slightly and found safety. But it kept
lowered itself
down in the sky a little bit.
Oh, okay. Like, okay, for, like with its hovering.
Yeah, with its hovering.
Okay.
But its eyes focused on the two men the entire time. Now,
okay, suspenseful.
Very. Now, Lucky described the creature that grabbed his hair from the roof as having a different appearance than the previous one they had seen through the window, making him think that there was more than just one of these beings. But they were uncertain to how many. They also determined that their fears of the bullets not damaging the creature was true as well. And they were right as well, because looking around, they began to see many of these creatures moving fast and appearing to be floating or flying rather than walking. And they made a very high-pitched noise as they moved around the house through the tree lines. He then shot at another creature that was perched in a tree, but the creature floated down and disappeared into a nearby bush. For about an hour, they repeatedly were out there shooting these creatures as they saw them, and then it went still and quiet outside. Lucky and Billy Ray then returned to the porch, where they began to discuss what had happened outside with the other adults of the home, discussing the possibilities for them. They thought this could be demons.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta kind of think where they are. 1955. They're out in the country. It is the Bible Belt.
Yeah, I get it.
The two men then remained on the porch, keeping an eye out for anything that would be trying to attack them next. Then, from inside the house, they heard a scream. It was from the youngest child, Mary. The children then burst into the main room of the home in terror. They were saying that they had just seen a creature with glowing eyes and big ears tapping at the window of their bedroom, The three children at this time were the first ones that were referring to the creatures as goblins. So,
Okay, I remember actually that this was in reference to, quote, goblins.
yes.
Because
So,
it's considered alien,
mhm.
but some people don't consider it alien. I mean, like, now I just threw out the theory, or a little bit ago, the theory of it being robotic, but don't a lot of people think that it was something ultra terrestrial like a goblin?
Yeah, so it's also referred to as the goblins of Hopkins.
Okay,
Hmm.
yeah.
Billy Ray and Lucky's mother took the children to the rear room at this point. But when they were doing this and they were trying to settle the children down, they heard the sound of a window shatter from the living room. But no one was in the living room at the time or saw anything approach, hit, or even touch the window. It had simply just shattered into pieces on its own
Oh,
account.
wow, okay.
Yeah, just burst. It's at this point Lucky realized that the windows were not going to protect the family from anything. So he decided he was going to go ahead and open up all the windows. He knew if the
What?
creature was, yeah, because he knew if the creatures weren't going to come back in again, he wanted to get a good shot without shattering glass out of all the windows in the house.
That's so odd.
Mm-hmm.
Because also, it maybe wouldn't just be one coming in, you could have a bunch of them coming in.
I mean, true, but it kind of seemed like the windows weren't protecting them anyways.
Yeah.
Was maybe he just didn't have money to replace all those windows? I mean, you got to think they don't have a television. They don't have
Yeah. Like, we
running
don't have a
water.
television, we don't have running water, we don't have a phone, but damn it, we have windows.
Yes, we're
And these
gonna
little hobgoblins are not busting these down tonight.
right. I'm sure that's what he was thinking. During this night, Billy Ray, Lucky, and JC were the only members that were shooting the creatures, and they did this throughout the night. The family reported that the creatures were on and off again with their visits throughout the night, peeking in windows. They could hear small footsteps on the roof, and it wasn't until after 11 p.m. that the creatures seemed to have lost interest. Once they felt it was safe, the family made their escape, and they drove to Hopkinsville Police Department. This time, the desk officer that was on duty that night was the first to hear the story. And he thought, of course, this must be some kind of joke. But he did continue to question the different members of the family in the group, and their answers, they were all staying consistent. And
Mm.
they did seem to have all been traumatized by whatever had been stalking them that night.
Okay, so either way, something happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
because they showed up just, of course, traumatized. I'm sure they were acting crazy as well
Well,
when they're
yeah.
trying to tell this story. But they did seem consistent, which, to me, that would also mean that it didn't seem like the officers could sense they were drunk or anything. Because if they were drunk, they would have all been like blabbering different things and incoherent. After these interviews, it didn't take long for the police to take the accounts that they heard seriously. And Police Chief Russell Greenwald said something scared these people, something beyond reason.
Mm.
The family was then later escorted back to the property by two cruisers around 1 a.m. Shortly after they arrived back with the police, military police began showing up.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Now, the military police were from the nearby airbase, and they were said to have arrived with cameras. However, there's no evidence of any pictures, and it's unknown also who reached out to the military and called them out to the scene. Some people say the police called them in case the creatures were still there, and others believe that the military was already on the case and had gone out there because they had some intel on what had taken place earlier that night.
Okay. But we don't know for sure
No.
if they really were there.
They were there.
They...
Yeah, we just don't know who called them out. If they came on their own accord or if the police informed them.
Okay. There's always something when you have something like extraterrestrial potentially or whatever else, and the military gets involved, and then the public statement's like, weather balloon. And it's like, why was the government getting all in it? Why was the military so concerned about the weather balloon?
Yeah. And they were already there.
Yeah, I mean, if a plane crashes,
Military doesn't show up
do
the
they? I
same
mean,
night. I don't think so. Unless it's
I
like
don't know.
like if it's a commercial plane, maybe. Unless
Anytime
it,
you get soldiers come in to investigate, though, it gets weird.
yeah, unless it was a military aircraft that he had seen.
Full of
Mm.
goblins, yeah.
Yeah, full of goblins.
Yeah, we have that happens.
That happens all the time. You know this.
Yeah.
Now, the police did a quick search, thinking, of course, that they would find drugs or alcohol,
Mhm.
something that's going to give an explanation to the story that they've been told of this night's occurrences. But instead, what they found was bullet shells scattered around everywhere, broken glass, bullet holes. And the police report does state that they also found a luminous patch on the ground within the trees. But the glowing on the ground could only be seen from a certain angle. So they reported
Oh,
if you stood like directly beside it, you couldn't see anything. But if you stood first from a certain angle, you could see this glowing patch.
was it like something on the ground, or was it just that patch of ground was glowing on its own almost?
That patch of ground was like glowing on its own, but you could only see it from like a certain angle.
Hmm.
It's interesting. Everyone at the scene was on very high alert, both the officers and the family. So at one point, an officer accidentally steps on the cat's tail and it lets out this, of course, horrible scream. And it threw everybody into a complete panic. And all of a sudden, you've got everybody with their weapons drawn all around the house. So you can kind of tell how tense the environment was. Everyone was
Hmm.
really taking this seriously.
That's cats for you.
Well, so now the family claims that after the officers left, they tried to, of course, calm down, and there's no rest, but they were trying to calm themselves, but the creatures returned
What?
around 3:30 a.m.
Oh,
But this time they were not as active, so they didn't seem like they were taunting them. They were just kind of around this time. They weren't doing what they had done hours before. Now, the
they're
next,
just like dicking around in the yard.
yeah, I guess so. Like they could hear them on the roof and things like that, but they weren't like peering through the windows and grabbing at them.
That sounds kind of terrifying, though. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, getting attacked would be more terrifying, but
But were they getting attacked or were they attacking the creatures first?
yeah, the creatures maybe were just like, hello,
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to look around. And when that one reached down to grab him from the roof, it could have just been like an inspection thing.
Yeah. They were the ones who were shooting at the creatures.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The next day, officers did come back to follow up with the family, but the house was abandoned. When the neighbors were questioned, they said that the family had packed up and all left the house at sunrise. A couple of older members did stay back, however, to get their affairs in order, but they didn't stay in the house. And everyone then moved to Evansville, Indiana, and the Sutton family never returned to the
Mm.
area.
The whole family just up and left.
Now, that's where the story ends. Some sources say the story ends, but
Okay.
other sources I found state that the family did not leave, but were,
Oh.
yeah, but stayed and were, and I kind of believe this a lot more because there's a lot more evidence about it. They state that the family were consistently harassed by people that were curious about the incident. They had people showing up in their property unannounced, and some would even walk right into the home.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, some people even just showed up to ridicule the family, calling them drunks or scam artists.
Mm.
And the ridicule and harassment got so bad that they put up no trespassing signs all over the property. But of course, this was useless. People just kept coming.
Yeah. The sign doesn't actually do anything.
Mm-hmm. And it was said that the family started charging people fees to be able to come on the property or in the home itself. So like 50 cents for entering the property, $1 for information, and $10 if they wanted to take pictures. The family themselves claimed that this was a way they thought would keep people away. If the family, just
Mm.
started charging them money, people would be like, oh, I have to pay for this. I'm not going out there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what they claimed. But this also did backfire as people, just like you were like, started calling them liars and scam artists. And it didn't help their case that Lucky and Billy Ray both worked for the traveling circus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that they're known for being con artists.
Yeah. So that kind of played into that, it being a hoax.
Yeah.
But besides these fees, the family was not reported to have asked for any money.
You mean from just in general?
Yeah, like newspapers, book deals, things like this.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
and that's what I heard that it was reported. And then we'll get into some things that they participated in, so it's not really known if they did receive money, but people say they didn't. The family, of course, received widespread coverage. This went from local and national press, radio stations, outlets such as the New York Times. The story really took on a life of its own, and the story spread so fast. And of course, it was kind of like a game of telephone, and the story would change, and even down to the numbers of creatures would increase or decrease, kind of depending on the source of the story. In 1956, a book was put out by Isabel Davis called Close Encounters at Kelly and Others of 1955. This is believed to be the most accurate account published. The report includes maps, drawings, records from, of course, other encounters from around the world that were similar to the Sutton family. And it did also include several interviews from the Sutton family. So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know if they got paid or not for that. I would assume they would have if they were taking the time to interview for this book.
And
I
don't know how that works.
And I'm kind of looking at, where they're living, and maybe they would like to get a telephone. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or running water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, if I was in that kind of predicament, I definitely would charge so that I could get some running water. I would be
I agree.
I would be like, you're going to pay me for those interviews. Now, in the book, though, they state that Glennie Langford was known for being a no-nonsense woman, and she was very private, and the Sutton family was not known for making any kind of outlandish claims like this. And it seemed like she wouldn't have allowed her family to make such claims that would put them under such harassment by the public.
Okay.
There was no kind of history of the family ever behaving like this or going around telling lies, or it was out of character for this family. The family themselves would stick to their story for years after it occurred. They were very consistent. Some of them even claimed that the government would come out and visit them in the years after the incident, either to discredit their story or silence them altogether.
Do you think that's true?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like the same thing we hear in all these accounts that the government comes out.
And that happened with Flatwoods.
Yeah, and this being during 1955, I feel like that occurred more often.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is the Flatwoods monster case was only 3 years prior, and it was only about a little over a 3-hour drive from here. I wonder, and it's not far from Appalachia. I mean, Flatwoods Monster was in Appalachia, so I wonder if there's maybe some kind of correlation here.
Could be. I wish they had like an oily, stinky smell. Then we could be like, yep.
Yeah, they're
same
not
one.
similar creatures at all.
No.
Maybe, I don't know.
After this, of course, the family claimed that they also suffered from nightmares, anxiety, and continued to be ridiculed for this encounter. So it didn't turn out, even if they were making a little bit of money from this, it wasn't going in a way for them that if I was them, I wouldn't be keeping the shenanigans up. If everyone's already calling me a fraud and harassing me, I'd be like, okay, you got me. And I feel like if they did that, if it wasn't true and they did that, people would be like, yep, it would go away, I feel like once people are kind of proven that they're right, they don't really have anything else to say.
I guess.
So after this, a publication was made called Alien Legacy by Geraldine Sutton, who was 2 years old at the time the events took place. So she wasn't there, but she was kind of giving the accounts that she was told her whole life growing up. So she wrote that book. And then there was an article that was published in the Frontier of Psychology that uses as an example of science and pseudoscience, stating, quote, instructors should encourage students to consider what additional evidence would be required to accept this extraordinary claim and to lay out plausible alternative explanations for the events. That the Hopkins entities have a decidedly earthly explanation. The, quote, aliens were in fact great horned owls, and that the
Oh my God.
eyewitnesses, we're going to get into it, simmer down for a second.
Owls?
Hold on, we will get into it. And that the eyewitnesses were probably intoxicated during the alien attack. Students usually find the true story of the events amusing, and this story can lead naturally into discussions of Area 51 and other worldly interest and the Greys, end quote. So that's what was published in regards to this. And we're going to get into theories. We're going to get there.
Yeah.
So after this, many articles have been published in the years that seem to display the events as satire. And even though the family stays consistent, stating the creatures being silver, many newspapers at the time did describe them as little green men. But currently, if you think about it, during this time period, it was very popular to depict aliens as being little green beings. So I think it's a little bit more accurate that they're stating that they're a silver color, especially because now we do know them more as being gray, and in fact even have the particular race, the Greys. Yeah.
So maybe that's literally exactly what they saw.
Yeah, so I feel like it does make this story more believable for the time period, that they weren't saying little green men like they would have seen in movies.
Well, and also kind of like what you said, that everyone was just kind of using the term little green men at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like every kind of story in the media about aliens or potential aliens around this time frame, kind of like up until even like the 80s, I feel they would use that term, little green men. Yeah. And it became like an umbrella term just for the word alien.
Mm-hmm. So to me, them saying it was gray, it just makes it a little bit more believable for that time period. But as of today, the city of Kelly even has a festival called Kelly's Little Green Men Days to celebrate the encounter.
Ooh, we should go.
I know, it sounds fun. Now, we're going to get into the theories that could have taken place that night. So, skeptics of this evening's event seem to believe a few theories, quite a handful, I think. Some of these theories we've heard before when it comes to alien encounters. So, Air Force Major Johnny Albert believed that a troop of monkeys had escaped from a circus, and the monkeys had been painted silver as part of their act. He believes that the monkeys were only trying to find food, which is why they attempted to peek through the windows and approach the family. However, there's no evidence that there was a circus nearby or that monkeys were escaped within the area somewhere. But that's what he says. He says it was just monkeys.
I love how he's like monkey. He has literally nothing to base that off of, and he goes monkeys.
Monkeys.
We're in the middle of Kentucky.
Flying monkeys. Bullet-resistant flying monkeys.
That glow.
That glow. Now, another...
Silver.
They were painted silver for the circus.
What circus was painting monkeys?
It was 1955. I'm sure many.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that was a thing, but, like, was that... I mean, I've never heard of that.
No. It would make sense if it was like, oh, and at the time it was reported that a couple monkeys escaped from us, but there's no report of a circus or monkeys escaping.
We need something to go on here.
Yeah, other than just, it had to have been monkeys. Now, another note from skeptic Joe Nickel believed that it was just a case of very aggressive barn owls. He believed that the barn owl's features, such as the large glowing eyes, the flying bat-like ears, and the size.
They don't have bat ears.
Well, they have those little ears that like stick straight up at the top of their head.
But weren't these like
these are big,
like a bat?
Yeah, these are big like bat-like ears. And he believes that could easily been mistaken. He also says the size as well, but they reported them being 4 to 5 feet tall. That's like me.
Yeah, and humanoid.
Yeah. Now
Because the flatwoods
some,
monster, one of the theories about that was a giant barn owl.
that one too.
However, it was described as being like pretty tall, first of all. Second of all, they did not say that it had like anything that was humanoid to its features. So that to me, the skeptic idea of that being a barn owl, I can understand being a tiny bit more logical. Not that I think that the Flatwoods Monster was a barn owl, but
Hmm.
this was described as humanoid.
Yeah. And
So,
also, if they were shooting owls, wouldn't they have found a dead owl on the property?
yeah, what kind of monkeys and owls do they have in Kentucky?
Exactly. Project Blue Book, which is a government initiative that was released
Oh,
to disprove such cases, called it a mix of UFO hysteria and a hoax put on by the family. It was believed that Billy Ray seeing the flying object or saucer falling from the sky caused a panic, as in, of course, the 1950s were a huge time for UFOs and movies
mhm.
and talk within society, which then caused everyone within the home to be put on edge, and perhaps some foxfire, which is a term for a bioluminescent fungus, had lit up in the woods during that evening.
Okay.
And when a breeding pair of barn owls became aggressive towards the men who were out on the porch, they decided to defend their territory by angrily peering in the windows and flying through the trees around the home. It was thought that because the timeline fit for the owl theory, as barn owls become territorial during late summer and early fall. But it's also known that owls behaving in this manner make a lot of vocal noises as well, which the men did not report hearing the owls hooting and hollering through the trees. They believe that all of these occurrences happening at once is what the family hysteria led to that evening. Another theory, and I couldn't really find any more about this, just includes that there could have been a secret military experiment, since there are two military bases close to the family home. So there's Fort Knox, and then much closer to them was the Fort Campbell.
I
So,
believe that.
I do too. And I was like, it's kind of odd that I can't find more information about that, but I'm finding a whole lot from, Project Blue Book and things like that.
Yes, I agree.
hmm So I thought that was interesting.
I believe that.
I do too. Because it makes sense, especially if we're thinking about like the robot aliens.
Yeah.
hmm
They could be that could very easily have been some type of test for new like something for the war.
It was also Air Force Major that said it was monkeys escaping. What if they had something that
Yeah.
escaped on their end and they were like, well, we'll just say it was monkeys?
Yeah, maybe it was crossbred with a monkey.
Maybe. Because I
And
find
they were
it,
like, we're going to put these monkeys into battle and send them on the enemy. And we know that they do stuff like this.
but they're floating. I feel like monkey was a decoy for whatever they had or knew about. Maybe did escape.
Or maybe the military drugged this family and it was like Project MK Ultra.
Oh, that could be.
And maybe they had people put on costumes and then fed the family drugs and like fed this narrative to them. I don't know.
I don't know. I find it strange though that it's the guy is from the Air Force that says that, and then
Hmm.
there's two military bases. They're kind of like wedged right in between. Now, some believe that the UFO Billy saw was nothing more than a meteor or a comet, which does kind of make sense to the way we described it in the beginning. But it did hover, he said. Allegedly, a police officer stated that he had heard several meteorites coming from the southwest, followed by loud noises that day just after 11 p.m. They
Mm.
also believe that these sightings could have been mistaken identification of jet planes. There were also other members of the community that reported having seen meteors in the sky that night, and a Mr. Long described seeing a ball of fire going over his house towards the north at around 6:30 that evening. So everything was going towards the north. The fireball had also been reported seen by soldiers that were stationed at Fort Campbell.
It's always interesting when people have a story like this and then other people that they don't know are like, yeah, I saw something in the sky too.
Mm-hmm. Everybody seems to come out of the woodworks at that time. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It could have had something to do with the meteor shower. I mean, the spaceship or whatever it was could have just been coming in at the same time. Because meteor makes sense for how he described it. The only thing that doesn't is
Yeah.
the hover and the humanoids.
Yeah. Yeah.
That came from the north of the property, which is where he saw the saucer go down at. Last theory, of course, is that some think it didn't happen at all and that the two men just got drunk and started shooting all over the place. And they all got together and just made up a story.
Yeah. I can understand it being a hoax and maybe like the meteor shower happened and they're like, hey, what if aliens came out? And then they're like, hey, what do you want to try to make some money? But it's also like they didn't get like a book deal.
Mm-mm.
It's not like Amityville Horror.
Mm-mm.
They didn't get a bunch of like they didn't go on like a press tour.
No. In fact, they
did
were
like
treated
a few
awful.
interviews. Yeah. Now they did charge for people to come to the house, but also like whatever.
I mean, people were coming up to their house regardless. Might as well at
Yeah.
that point.
Like why not? And I also think that you can be legit and get a book deal and a movie deal and a press tour and all that stuff and still be telling the truth because why not monetize on it, right?
Yeah.
But it does, it does hurt credibility sometimes. But they didn't do this at all. So if it was a hoax, it was a hoax just for fun.
Which doesn't really make any sense. And that's
And
a
the fact the
very...
military really did come, that
Yeah.
adds a lot. I don't know.
It's such an elaborate story, too. The news outlets and everything also portrayed them as a satire. There was cartoons drawn of them. And in all of them, they make them look very, hillbilly, drinking out of the jugs with the XX on it. And so they were really played to be these farmers out in the middle of nowhere that just made up this story that were drunk and not credible source to take it from.
Maybe they ran the story that way so that they looked less credible.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, like the military or whatever was like, hey, make them look way less credible.
Mm-hmm. Because
so that nobody believes it.
Yeah, because in the interviews they did, the author of that book that came out in 1956 stated that, they were not like a nonsense family. They weren't drunks. In fact, I had read somewhere that the mother, Lucky's mother, would not even allow alcohol within the home. So it wasn't like a bunch of hillbillies that were just out drinking on their porch one night and decided to come up with some random crazy story, in my opinion. Plus, when they're going to the police station, and they would have to be pretty good actors to have the police take the time to be like, oh, I think they're telling the truth. When you come into a station and you're telling that bizarre of a story, you have to have some credibility to you for them to be like, okay, hold on. We need to go out there because this seems real. But yeah, that's all I have when it comes to theories and what happened to the Sutton farm on that August night. What do you think I'm going to say? Aliens. I think it was either aliens or the government doing some stuff, but I don't find it odd either that aliens would be near military bases like that. Because I also do believe that we do kind of co-work with aliens sometimes, so...
Or maybe the military, that base was being used for some kind of like scary something or other, and the aliens wanted to deter it, because that's a thing that happens, and that's like documented by the military people.
Yeah.
And there are videos of it, and it'll be like a nuke or something, and an orb will appear, and all of a sudden it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they showed up because of that.
Yeah. And one thing I was wondering about the glowing around the aliens and the metal clinking, maybe that was some kind of protected shield.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why it sounded... I mean, to them, you also got to think what they're trying to describe these sounds as. They're only going to be able to describe it as something they know. Like he said, it sounded like a gun shooting a metal pill. That's a sound he would be able to refer to, or the pennies shaking around in a bag. So the sound may have been slightly off. It may have just had like a metallic ring to it.
Yeah, and if it's scary and in the moment, that might be the
Mm.
best way that you can like remember it.
Yeah, and describe it and put the sound into actual words. I don't know. I'm believing this one. I just don't feel, and I feel like they would have slipped up, and their stories have stayed consistent
Yeah.
through all these years.
I used to think this was a hoax because it felt so like crazy
It is
to me,
very crazy.
but I feel like we've heard and talked about
Yeah.
crazier.
So this
I
seems
mean,
a little chill compared to some of the ones we've talked about and believed in.
honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
Like compared to Sam the Sandown Clown,
Oh gosh, I believe
that's
that one
really
too.
crazy.
That
I
one's
do too.
crazy.
Or we did the Pascagoula abduction.
Mm-hmm.
And that one wasn't as weird with like all the little men, but there were multiple abductions
Yeah.
and they did describe the entities in a weird way. I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
all of that, but I feel like they could have gone crazier with it.
But also, it's pretty kind of standard.
Yeah, it's like part of me is like this is a crazy story, but then it's also like it's not that crazy
Yeah.
considering other alien stories. I don't know. I think I buy it. I buy
I
it.
buy it too. And I also find it funny. This is the second one that we've kind of snipped together with Steven Spielberg there.
I know we've been doing a lot of alien lately.
Yeah. I now that I've found that he actually did use this case to base a science fiction horror film on.
Oh,
Uh,
he definitely got it from Sam, the
yeah,
Sandown Clown, 100%.
I think
Because
so.
if he's pulling from urban legend already, like, why not continue pulling from it?
Yeah. And this came out in the late 1970s, Night Skies did. So if he's pulling from this, I believe he pulled from that as well.
Uh huh.
And I did love
Cool.
Critters. Critters was used to be one of my favorite movies as a little kid growing up. So
Ew.
yeah, I used to love that movie. So it was kind of cool to see that this was based off that account
I've
loosely.
I'm I've never seen it, but isn't that the one where it's
These little critters, these little balls come out of the sky.
yeah,
Yeah, I used to love
very
that.
80s, right?
Very 80s
Like it's
classic.
got that very 80s looking kind of animatronic creature.
Yeah, like the little puppet
Yeah.
things that they use.
Yeah.
I
I don't
love
think
it.
I'd like it.
It's not something that you sit down and seriously watch. It's something that you put on to laugh and hang out and just have a vibe.
Like Saw.
Yeah, if that's your vibe, then yes. Like I would put on Critters for like Summerween or something and chill and hang out.
I feel like it's very Summerween.
Yeah, it's not something you invite people over and everyone sits seriously and quiet and watches Critters. Like no,
Hmm.
something you have on when you're barbecuing and chit chatting.
Yeah, you heard it here, folks.
Yeah, that's the only way to watch Critters. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got on the Sutton family.
I love it. Very fun.
Yeah, I thought I'd venture outside my box.
Oh, should I do another alien one and just keep this alien thing going?
What? How many aliens have we done in a row now? Like
Well,
3? No, we had Casey, so she kind of broke it up there a little bit for
she
us.
did.
Yeah.
Sudbring phone calls touches into aliens.
Yeah.
And then my next one was Sam the Sandown Clown, which touches into aliens.
Yeah.
And then this one.
We're just an alien podcast now. Well, I guess since we both believe in it, I guess we'll call it a wrap.
Yeah, we solved it.
We did.
Well, good night.
And pleasant nightmares.
Bye.
Bye.